All right, so welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah, great to be back.
Today, we're going to dig into some legal stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got some documents, actually, and this is about a potential housing discrimination case happening in Baltimore.
Wow.
Yeah, and, you start looking at it, and it seems like something's definitely going on, but as we kind of pick this apart, you'll see it's actually more complicated than maybe it seems at first glance.
Interesting. So, what kind of discrimination are we talking about here?
Well, it's centered around this development called Station East,
Okay.
and you have a bunch of black homeowners who have filed complaints with HUD against the group that, well, they kind of run things there.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and that's called the Historic East Baltimore Community Actions Coalition.
Oh boy, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, HEBCAC for short.
Got it. So what is HUD exactly, and what can they actually do in this kind of situation?
Yeah, good question. So think of HUD as kind of like the housing watchdog. They're the ones who are supposed to make sure everyone's playing by the rules when it comes to, housing and lending and all of that.
Right, right.
So they have the power to investigate these claims, enforce fair housing laws, and, hopefully help the homeowners get some kind of justice.
I see.
So the documents that we have, these are communications between the homeowner's lawyer and a HUD investigator.
So we're basically getting an inside look at how these cases work.
Exactly. It's like we're sneaking into their offices and listening in on their conversations.
Ooh.
Yeah. One of the first things that jumps out is this thing called deed riders.
Be brighter.
Yeah, these are like these extra clauses or conditions. They were attached to a lot of the homeowners' property deeds in Station East.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, and on the surface, it looks like both black and white homeowners were impacted by these deed riders at similar rates.
So where's the discrimination then, if everyone's affected equally?
Well, that's exactly what the lawyer's trying to argue against. You see, even though the percentage of homeowners affected might seem similar, the sheer number of black homeowners impacted is way out of proportion to the demographics of the larger housing market in Baltimore.
Oh, so it's not just about who got shit with these deed riders, but also how many people in a historically black neighborhood were affected.
Exactly. So the lawyer is raising this question of whether HEBCAC was deliberately targeting a community that was already vulnerable.
So you're saying this might be a case of reverse redlining?
Potentially, yeah. And that's a serious accusation.
It is, especially given the history of that tactic. Think back to the subprime mortgage crisis that devastated so many black families and communities.
Yeah, we're potentially talking about a systemic issue here, not just a few isolated incidents.
And to really understand how this played out, we need to look at what these homeowners actually went through, what these deed writers meant for them in their daily lives.
Yeah, they weren't just some abstract legal document. They had real-life consequences for these families.
Right, and the lawyer's alleging that black homeowners were way more likely to have this really burdensome document called the Historic Tax Credit Agreement attached to their deed writer. This wasn't something that white homeowners had to deal with nearly as often.
Really?
Yeah, and it gets worse. The lawyer also points to two specific white homeowners named Kish and Ortiz,
Okay.
who were allegedly let off the hook from their deed writer obligations, even though they didn't fulfill all of the terms, and that same opportunity it wasn't offered to black homeowners who were in similar situations.
Wow, so it sounds like they might have been treated differently.
That's what the lawyer is arguing, and if it's true, it raises serious questions about whether everyone was being treated fairly.
Yeah, and to make matters even worse, it seems like black homeowners were also the only ones who faced lawsuits for not sticking to the terms of the agreement, even though the lawyer claims that some white homeowners also kept tax credit proceeds and didn't face any legal consequences.
Wow, that's a big red flag if that's true. That suggests a double standard was in place.
Exactly. It's almost like there were two sets of rules, one for black homeowners and a completely different one for white homeowners.
Right, and these discrepancies aren't just limited to the deed writers themselves. We're also seeing a similar pattern when we look at how home repairs were handled.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
Well, let's take the case of Michelle Jackson. She's a black homeowner who says she was forced to use HEBCAC's preferred contractor for repairs on her home. Well, she claims the work was shoddy and poorly done, but she was basically stuck with this contractor even though she wanted to choose her own.
That sounds frustrating.
It is, especially if you consider the case of David Carr. He's a white homeowner who the lawyer says got more extensive repairs, including a new door, and he was actually allowed to dictate the terms of those repairs.
Oh, wow. So completely different experiences.
It is. And then there's Coraggio, another white homeowner who was apparently reimbursed for hiring her own roofer, which again wasn't something that black homeowners were offered according to the lawyer.
That's not right.
No, it's not, and these stories really point to a pattern of unequal treatment that goes beyond just the deed writers themselves.
So we're seeing potential bias in the deed writers, the terms attached to them, and even in how basic things like home repairs were handled.
Yes, and the lawyer is building a case that suggests this wasn't random, that this was deliberate and consistent practice that disadvantaged black homeowners.
So what happens next? What's the lawyer doing about all this?
Well, that brings us to the final part of the correspondence, where the lawyer lays out their proposed next steps to the HUD investigator.
Okay, so this is like their plan of attack.
Exactly. Their roadmap for moving the case forward and trying to get justice for these homeowners.
Because what are they asking for?
Well, first up, they're requesting a face-to-face interview with all the complainants so the investigator can hear their stories directly.
Makes sense, get it straight from the source.
Right. It allows the investigator to understand the real human impact of this alleged discrimination.
Right, because these aren't just statistics. These are real people's lives.
Exactly. And the lawyer also wants to interview Carmen Williams, who we talked about earlier, the former HEBCAC board member.
Right, the one who might have some inside information.
Yeah, her testimony could be really important if she can corroborate the complainant's claims and shed light on any discriminatory practices or policies within HEBCAC.
It's like getting a peek behind the curtain, seeing how decisions were really being made.
Exactly. And to get a clearer picture of how black homeowners were treated compared to white homeowners, the lawyer is also asking to interview other non-black homeowners in Station East.
Okay, yeah, that would be a good comparison point.
It is, because it allows them to see if there were any consistent differences in treatment that point to a pattern of discrimination.
Right, because if everyone was treated the same, regardless of race, then there wouldn't be much of a case here.
Exactly. And finally, the lawyer expresses a willingness to enter into conciliation and try to reach a settlement with HEBCAC.
So even though they're building a strong case, they're still open to finding a solution that works for everyone.
That's right. It shows that they're not just trying to punish HEBCAC, but rather find a way to address the harm that was caused.
So what is conciliation?
Well, basically, it's like a legal mediation process where HUD steps in as a neutral third party and tries to help both sides reach an agreement that remedies the harm caused by the alleged discrimination.
So less about pointing fingers and more about finding a solution.
Exactly. It's about accountability, but it's also about moving forward and making things right for the homeowners who were affected.
And what kind of solutions are we talking about here?
Well, it could involve things like financial compensation for the homeowners, changes to each HEBCAC's policies, or even a combination of both. It really depends on the specific circumstances and what the homeowners are seeking.
This case really highlights how housing discrimination isn't just some theoretical legal concept. It has real, tangible impacts on people's lives, their homes, their financial security, their sense of community.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that discrimination cases, particularly those involving reverse redlining, can be incredibly challenging to prove.
Yeah, I can imagine. Proving intent is never easy.
It's not, and that's why the lawyer's request to interview Carmen Williams, that former HEBCAC board member, could be so crucial. If she has firsthand knowledge of discriminatory practices within the organization, her testimony could be a game changer.
Like a smoking gun.
Exactly. And remember, the lawyer is also requesting interviews with other non-black homeowners in Station East. That's a key part of establishing a pattern of disparate treatment.
Right, because if they can show that black homeowners were consistently treated worse than white homeowners, then that strengthens their case.
Exactly. It helps them build a more compelling argument that this wasn't just random, that this was a deliberate practice that was embedded within the organization.
So we've gone from what seemed like a straightforward case of potential housing discrimination to a much more nuanced and complex situation.
That's often the reality of these cases. They rarely fit neatly into boxes. It's about understanding the layers, the context, and piecing together the evidence to see the full picture.
Like a legal puzzle.
Precisely. And this case raises some really important questions about the broader context of housing discrimination in America.
Yeah, like how widespread is this?
Right, because we often think of discrimination as something from the past. But this case shows it's still very much a present-day issue, even if it's become more subtle and insidious.
Not as in your face as it used to be.
Exactly. It's not just about blatant segregation or discriminatory policies anymore. It's about how systems and practices can perpetuate inequality, even if that wasn't their stated intent.
It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah, the cumulative effect of all these small biases,
Yeah.
seemingly minor discrepancies, and seemingly neutral policies that, when combined, create a very different reality for different groups of people.
And this case also highlights the importance of organizations like the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, who are fighting to ensure equal access to housing for everyone.
They play such a vital role holding institutions accountable and challenging discriminatory practices.
Without groups like them, these issues might never see the light of day.
Absolutely. Their work is crucial in making sure that everyone has a fair shot at a decent home and a thriving community.
And it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in this fight.
Yes, it's not just about legal battles or policy changes. It's about awareness, education, and a commitment to creating a more just and equitable society.
It's about speaking up when we see injustice,
And supporting organizations that are on the front lines of this battle.
working to level the playing field and create a world where everyone, regardless of their race or background, has the opportunity to thrive.
Well said.
This case is just one small piece of a much larger puzzle, but it's a reminder that the fight for housing equality is far from over.
It's a fight that requires all of us to stay vigilant, to keep pushing for change, and to never give up hope.
Couldn't agree more.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's time to dive a little deeper into this concept of conciliation
Yeah,
and see how it might play out in this case.
that sounds like a great place to start.
All right, let's do it. So conciliation, you were saying, is kind of like, what, a mediation?
Yeah, exactly. HUD comes in, tries to be neutral, helps the two sides find a solution.
To make up for the harm.
Exactly, yeah. Make things right. Could be money, could be changing HEBCAC's policies, maybe both.
Depends what the homeowners want.
Yeah, depends what they need, what would help.
It really makes you think, like, this isn't just some law in a book. This is people's homes, their lives.
Absolutely. This is real. And these cases, especially the reverse redlining stuff, it's not easy to win.
I bet. How do you even prove someone was, like, intentionally biased?
It's tough. Lots of factors. That's why that board member, Carmen Williams, her interview could be huge.
If she knows something, really saw stuff happening.
Yeah, if she can back up what the homeowners are saying, show that HEBCAC had policies, practices, to discriminate.
Like, getting inside their heads.
Right, and don't forget, they're talking to other homeowners too, not just Black families.
To compare.
Exactly. See, did white homeowners have the same problems? Same hurdles? Or was it different for them?
If it was different, that's a pretty strong sign.
Right, it's not just random then. It's a pattern built into how HEBCAC does things.
This is getting wild. We
Uh-huh.
started with some paperwork. Now it's like a whole web of stuff.
That's how it goes. These cases, they're complicated. Lots of layers. You got to put the pieces together, see the whole thing.
Makes you wonder, how often does this happen? This subtle stuff flying under the radar.
Big question. This case, it might just be the tip of the iceberg.
Makes you think.
Mm.
But hey, at least there's groups like that Lawyers Committee. They're fighting back.
They're essential, making sure everyone has equal access to housing, holding these groups accountable.
Without them, this might all stay hidden.
Totally. Their work, it's so important. Everyone deserves a fair shot, a decent place to live, part of a good community.
Makes you realize this isn't just about laws, it's bigger than that.
It is. It's about awareness. People got to know this stuff is happening, educate themselves, be ready to speak up.
See something, say something.
Right. Fair housing laws, they protect everyone, not just race, but religion, family status, disability. It's huge.
Everyone deserves a home, no matter who they are.
Couldn't agree more. And that's what makes this Baltimore case so interesting. It makes you wonder, how much of this bias is out there, just lurking beneath the surface?
That's a tough question. Kind of scary, honestly.
It is, but we can't just ignore it. We need more transparency from groups like HEBC, better enforcement of the laws, and we got to support the people fighting for change.
I'm with you. This whole deep dive, it's been intense, but it also gives me hope.
Me too. These problems are big, deeply rooted, but people are working hard to fix them, and each of us, we can do our part.
Yeah, even small things make a difference.
Absolutely. It's all about a more just world where everyone has a chance to thrive.
Well said. We've covered a lot. But this fight for housing equality, it's not over.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Gotta keep pushing for change, never lose hope.
You got that right. This has been really thought-provoking. So what's next? Where do we go from here?
We think it's time to get into this whole conciliation thing. What does that actually look like? How can it play out here in Baltimore?
Sounds good to me. Let's get into it. So much to think about. Makes you feel kind of helpless, you know? These huge problems. But is there anything we can do? Like, regular people.
Oh, absolutely. Tons. First off, know your rates.
Hmm.
Seriously, look up the fair housing laws where you live. It's surprising, a lot of folks have no clue what's even protected.
So it's not just about being, like, a good person. It's knowing the actual rules.
Exactly. Then you can spot those red flags. And if you see something fishy, speak UP. Don't be a bystander. Report it. Your voice matters more than you think.
Hold people accountable, even if it's just little things that feel wrong.
Exactly. And remember, these laws, they cover a lot. Not just race, religion, families, disabilities. It's making sure everyone has an equal shot at a decent place to live.
Everyone deserves a home, right? No matter what.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And thinking back to Baltimore, it makes you wonder, how common is this? All this sneaky bias happening all over, we just don't see it.
Kind of disturbing, honestly.
It is. But we can change things. We can demand more transparency, push for those laws to be enforced seriously, and support the groups out there fighting for this.
This whole deep dive, it's been heavy, but there is hope, right?
Absolutely. Problems are massive, yeah, but people are out there tackling them head on. And we can help. Even small acts add up.
Makes you think, what can I do today to make a difference?
That's the spirit. It's about that better future, where everyone has a chance to live well, be part of a strong community.
This was intense. A lot to process, but I'm glad we dug into it.
Me too. Important stuff. And hey, the fight ain't over, but thanks to folks like you listening, learning, that's how we move forward.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Stick with us. We'll keep exploring these tough topics. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep pushing for that better world.